Hey, fish keepers, Aqua Alex Cardinelli here. I have a sad video for you today, but we're also doing a tribute and memorial video for one of my great fish keeping friends, one of my fish keeping mentors, and the owner of a Western Massachusetts fish store called Fish Frenzy. This Friday, I got the very unfortunate news that my friend Ed Pecord has passed away. I have known Ed Pecord for decades. Ed was a very genuine person, a very kind person, and he really loved the aquarium hobby. I mean, his love for the aquarium hobby shone in all the fish stores that he had. He was a genuine aquarium hobbyist, and he really loved tropical fish, and he was very passionate about those tropical fish. So I was heartbroken when I learned about Ed Pecard's death because Ed was one of my fish keeping friends and mentors in Western Massachusetts when I was growing up and living there. Now, let me tell you about Ed. Ed was somebody that enjoyed selling fish to fish keepers, but he was more importantly also very happy to see fish keepers take the next step in the aquarium hobby. A good example of this is when I first got my saltwater aquarium back in 2016. And when I told Ed that I am keeping saltwater now, he was very proud of me, and he told me he's very proud that I took the next step in the aquarium hobby. And he went out of his way to give me words of wisdom and advice that I remembered that helped me keep saltwater effectively. So I am forever thankful for that. And that meant a lot to me that he was so happy to see me progress in the aquarium hobby. And I know he has done that for many other fish keepers in the Western Mass area. Ed was more than a fish store. He was a fish family. Lots of his long-time customers have turned into personal friends, and I know that I am not the only customer that became a friend with Ed Pecord. That is just the connection he had with the Western Mass fish keeping community, and that is great. So I first met Ed Pecord through my dad. My dad had been shopping at Ed's earlier stores in Amherst, but I met Ed Pecord with his first Fish Frenzy location, which was in West Springfield, Massachusetts. And I was probably about 10 or 11 years old back then, and that was when I got my first aquarium. Now, at the West Springfield location, that's where I met the silver dollar fish family. That's where my love of Mylius herberapinus red hook silver dollars came in, and I really enjoyed learning about the red hooks from Ed Pecord. Ed and I both adore the red hook silver dollar. So I first learned about red hooks, black bar silver dollars, and even the hard belly silver dollar at Ed's West Springfield location. So by the time I was 13, I was already a customer at Ed Pecord's, and I got to grow up around Ed Pecord's fish stores, and I got to be a customer of his for a while until I moved to South Florida in 2019. So I enjoyed every single one of Ed's fish stores from West Springfield all the way through South Hadley. He had locations in West Springfield. He had a couple in Indian Orchard, and he had one in Ludlow. The Ludlow location was my personal favorite because it was so big and he had a wide variety of fish in that store. Now, I mentioned it earlier that Ed and I both loved South American Amazonian fish. And Ed was one of few fish stores in the location that sold a lot of South American fish. Ed always had all different types of South American cichlids like walrus, severums, angels, Oscars, South American cherisons like the Mentinus and Mylius that I mentioned. And Ed is also the first Western Mass fish store that I saw a semi-Procholotus in there, which is the flagtail Procholotus. So my very first time seeing a flagtail Procholotus in Western Mass came at Ed Pecord's location, which is awesome. I'll always remember that. That will always be a memory of mine. And he had a lot of great South American fish. So it was great that Ed and I always communicated about South American Amazonian fish. And I have to tell you, the Life in the Amazon series that I do here on my YouTube channel was kind of co-created by Ed Pecord. He recommended to me that I do a podcast on Amazonian animals. And I did an audio podcast for a couple of years, but then I turned it into a video series here on YouTube. So I have to give Ed credit for that. That is a very successful podcast series here on my YouTube channel. It's getting ready to host its 41st video, which is awesome. So that is great. I can't wait for that. Anyway, I've been shopping with Ed for many, many years, at least 15 years, I would say. And I have spent close to thousands of dollars at Ed Pecord's store on both live fish, fish food, aquariums, supplies, you name it. And you know, when you go to other fish stores and you spend hundreds of dollars on fish and aquarium supplies, and when you get in your car, you're like, did I really just spend that much money at this store? Well, when I purchased that much from Ed, I never felt like that. I never questioned how much I spent. It felt like I was giving my money to a family member or a really good friend. And that is what I really liked about Ed Pecord's store, is the connections he built with his longtime customers. You felt more like a fish family rather than a customer. And that is something that I always appreciated from Ed. So if I ever get the opportunity to own a fish store, that is going to be how I operate. I'm going to treat my longtime customers like family. That's what I learned from Ed. So Ed is not only a great human, he was a great businessman and a great fish keeper. So I'm truly heartbroken that Ed Pecord passed away. The other day, I was thinking about Ed Pecord because I wanted him to be a part of my 10-year YouTube anniversary. Then come Friday, I got the news that he passed away, which is so tragic. I wish I had the opportunity to call Ed in recent years. The last time I saw Ed was probably about a month before I left Western Mass for good and moved to South Florida. And I remember Ed telling me, thank you for all the years of patronage and supporting my local fish stores. And that meant a lot to me. And it was one of the things that I really miss about Western Mass was going to Fish Frenzy. And it's really the only reason I regret leaving Western Mass is Ed's fish store. So that really meant a lot to me. I just wish that I picked up the phone, maybe in 2021, 2022, 2023, and called Ed and had a conversation with him. And if I did that, I would thank him for getting me more involved in the aquarium hobby and doing all he did for the aquarium hobby. I should have really thanked him. I don't know why I didn't do that, but thinking back now, I should have, because he did a lot for the aquarium hobby, not just for me, but for so many other people as well. So I regret that I didn't do that, and I should have. I don't know why I didn't call him, but I should have. Anyway, some of the memories that I have with Ed are, of course, discussing red hook silver dollars many times, him helping me advance in the saltwater hobby, buying many fish from Ed Pecord. I remember anytime he got monster fish in, like Oscars, Pacus, Tiger Shovelnose, Lima Shovelnose, he would call my dad and I over the phone because he knew that we loved monster fish, and we would be the first ones he offered those monster fish to, and 9 times out of 10, we ended up getting them, especially large red hooks. I would always be the one to go pick up those large red hooks that were dropped off. So those are some of my best memories with Ed Pecord. But 10 years ago, this is my all-time favorite memory, and I'm going to share this with you on this video. 10 years ago, I did a live on-location broadcast for my podcast, Aquatic Wetline, with Ed Pecord. And Ed talked about his fish stores and everything about Fish Frenzy. So in a few minutes, I'm going to play that interview as a tribute and memorial to my buddy, Ed Pecord. I'm going to play that for you in a minute. I'm going to play 9 minutes of that 1 hour broadcast that I did live at his Fish Frenzy South Hadley location. So I was very saddened when I got the news. And that just goes to show you that life is short. You never know when someone you had in your life is going to be taken away from you. So you should always tell people that you appreciate what they've done for you, and tell them and show them how much you appreciate them. Anyway, rest in peace, Ed Pecord. I am very thankful for the years that I was able to purchase fish from you, and I am very thankful for the knowledge that you have bestowed upon me in the aquarium hobby. The Western Mass community lost a wonderful fish keeping gentleman, a wonderful aquarium enthusiast, and they lost a wonderful aquarium store. It really is a shame that Ed passed away, but rest in peace, my friend. I will see you down the road at some point. Hopefully not soon, but down the road at some point. And I want to thank you for everything you've done for the aquarium community. So with that being said, thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy 10 minutes with Ed Pecord in a live on location broadcast that I did. This has been a tribute to the late, great fish store owner, Ed Pecord. Thank you all for watching. Fish Frenzy owner Ed Pecord, how are you today, sir?
Oh, pretty good. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to have you on the show. This is my first time having you ever on the Aquatic One, and I'm glad to be broadcasting here live.
Yeah, it's I hear a little echo because I'm hearing hearing the radio show and your voice at slightly different times, but we'll work with that.
Now, I can remember shopping with you since I was in my early teenage years, and now I am a young adult, and I always remember your store had awesome fish and the best prices in town. I've always liked your store, and I think you do a fantastic job.
Well, thank you. I try to bring back the roots of what I used to experience when I was a kid back in the '60s. So try to do.
Sorry about that. We had a little loss of connection there for a second. Sorry about that. We had a loss of connection for a second.
Is that true? Am I back on?
Yep,
Okay.
you're back on. Yep.
All right. So yeah, I kind of draw the theme of my store based on the stores I used to go to when I was a kid, and that's basically why it's a little different than what you see out there. And
I actually do have some questions for you that I'd like to ask you.
Okay.
Now, I can remember a store in West Springfield, Ludlow, and Indian Orchard. Now, when did Fish Frenzy first open, and how did you get into the fish store business?
Yeah, actually, I ran a fish store when I was in high school out of a back room in my parents' house. But then I gave it up for about 20 years when I moved to Cambridge, Mass. But towards the end of my stay in Cambridge, I started working at a pet store in Saugus, a really large pet store, and I got reinterested in fish and the business both. And so I opened my own store in Cambridge called Boston Tropical Fish and Reptiles. I opened it with a partner, and that didn't go well. So we split our ways, and I moved back to South Hadley. When I moved back to South Hadley, I got bored, so I opened a little store in Amherst, and I was there for 5 years with Amherst Aquarium. But I wanted to get more business, so I moved to West Springfield and changed the name to Fish Frenzy then. Now, my location in West Springfield wasn't ideal. It was on a busy road, Riverdale Road, or they call it Riverdale Street now. But it was hard to get to because the traffic was only one way. So somebody suggested I move to Indian Orchard, and I found a nice spot there. But I was only there for a short time before I needed more space, so I moved across the street in Indian Orchard. And then I decided to move to Ludlow for a little bit better location, and I was there for 5 years. But now things have changed, and I wanted to downsize a bit and be closer to home, so I moved here to South Hadley. And that's really the history.
That sounds great. So you answered my next question, actually. My next question was for you. Why did you move to South Hadley? But you pretty much answered that already.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty close to my house, and you know, it's a pretty good spot. It has something I didn't have in the other store, which was cement floors, so I don't have to worry about water leaking through the floor when there's the inevitable spills. And yeah, so I kind of like the spot. The electricity is a little cheaper here in South Hadley because the town owns the utilities, and it's
Okay.
publicly owned instead of commercial. So that helps out too.
Awesome. So my next question for you is, what is your best seller, and do you have any sales?
Actually, my best sellers are probably, and it's weird because every week I have regular customers that don't know I sell frozen food, and yet the frozen food is really probably the thing that I have to make sure I stock every week. So I'd say frozen food, the flake foods, the omega-1 line is very popular, as well as the cobalt and Hikari foods that I sell because I have those at good prices. And then I'd say filter cartridges are another big seller, especially the no-name brands, which I sell at a lower price than the packaged ones. And then for livestock, I sell a lot of aquatic plants, tetras, a lot of smaller fish for planted tanks. African cichlids are popular. And then I do also sell a lot of corals. And right now, people tend to buy the frags because they're cheaper. Frags are like little segmented pieces of coral that are cut off and growing, and a cheaper way of starting than buying a large colony of coral. The saltwater fish are harder to get, but I do pretty well with the tank-raised clownfish. So I guess that's about it. I'd say, yeah, the best seller is probably the frozen food, mysis shrimp, bloodworms, frozen brine shrimp, and probably spirulina-fed brine shrimp is a big seller here. It's they actually take the brine shrimp and they feed it spirulina algae until it turns green, and so the fish get the best of both worlds. They get the brine shrimp, which are like candy for them, and then they also are consuming the spirulina algae, which is a very nutritious algae. Because the brine shrimp by itself tends not to be as nutritious. So, yeah, I guess that's probably the best seller, the frozen foods.
Sounds great. So what do you have for stock for freshwater fish and saltwater fish right now?
Let's see. For freshwater fish, I picked up something unusual that I'd never had before, and I've had like 3 of them so far. They're the giant puffer, the imbu. It's MBU is spelled. It's a giant freshwater puffer, and they're pretty neat. They seem to be pretty friendly. They don't appear to be as nasty as some of the smaller brackish water ones that tend to bite other fish. And so far, the ones I've had, they don't come down with fungus or ick problems like the brackish water ones do. So he's kind of interesting. And let's see. And of course, my favorite is always the red hook silver dollars. I always have those in stock because they're a personal favorite. Then there's the regular things, the neon tetras and cardinal tetras. The glowfish have been very popular lately, even though the price hasn't come down on them. The glowfish are actually genetically modified fish, and they're the first fish with a patent on them. So there's lawyers involved, so I guess you'll never see the price come down on those, but they're still pretty fascinating. Then there's a lot of African cichlids. Mostly when I say African cichlids, we're talking about the Malawi cichlids, the Mbuna, the rock-dwelling Malawi cichlids. There's also the open water Malawi cichlids. And then there's a whole bunch of other cichlids from Africa, from the different lakes. But usually when people say African cichlids, they mean the Malawi Mbuna or rock-dwelling cichlids, which are probably the most colorful and tend to be the least expensive of them also. So, yeah, I do have a lot of those in stock. For saltwater fish, I have some sand-sifting gobies, some watchman gobies, and mandarin blennies, which are pretty colorful. Those kind of require special care. And then I have some tank-raised fish, like the Atlantic neon gobies that are a cleaner fish. They'll go up on the other fish and eat parasites off the fish or dead skin. And the other fish seem to enjoy it. And then I got the tank-raised clownfish, of course. And the 6-line wrasse are pretty popular because they tend to do things in the tank as well as being maybe the most colorful saltwater fish there is. Because they have blue, magenta, yellow, have green tail, orange eyes. Pretty fascinating little fish. And they never stay still, so you can never get a full glimpse of all their colors. And let's see, we got a mimic yellow tang. He's kind of a film algae eater. And then there's a few triggerfish. I guess that's about it for the fish stock.